Hey guys, so in this video I want to show you everything that you need to know and all the steps you have to take if you want to tune your DRZ 400 S or SM with the fake or replica FCR 39 carb that you can get for super cheap on AliExpress and eBay. Please consider the specific regulations of your country for the registration and operation of your vehicle. After you have installed parts which are subject to registration or which change the engine performance, please have them entered in the vehicle documents by your inspection authority. The installation of the adapters and possibly the matching carburetor represents a change to the air intake and fuel mixture system of your motorcycle. If the carburetor is not optimally tuned as a result of such modifications, the service life of the engine may be reduced or, in the worst case, engine damage may occur. If in doubt, have the adapter and carburetor installed and tuned by a professional workshop. First, we're going to talk about the expected performance gains you will have by installing this carburetor. Then I'm going to show you the carburetor itself, explain a little bit what the different parts are. Next, I'm going to explain what adapters you need to buy to get this carburetor fitting for your DRZ S or SM. Then I'm going to also show a little bit of the installation of those adapters. Next, I'll provide you with a little shopping list of other parts you need to get for the installation to get the prepared carburetor into your bike. I'm going to summarize the total cost that you can expect by buying all the parts. Then I'm going to talk about the jetting of the bike. Next, I'm going to explain the jets on the carburetor, where they are, how you can access them to change them. And the last part of this video, which is actually around half of the video, I'm going to show you how to install the FCR 39 carburetor into your bike. You will see me doing it with an FCR 39 already installed. I'm gonna take it out and then put it back in so you can see the steps that are required. If you still have, or I suppose you still have the Mikuni stock carburetor in your bike, but it will look basically almost the same, and I will hope you will learn a lot from it. What are the benefits of doing this mod with the FCR 39? So the expected horsepower gain can be of up to 4 or 5 horsepower. I will link you a diagram. The gas response, the throttle response will be much better, and for around 300 euros or dollars, that's the single best performance mod you can do. So first, this is what the carburetor looks like if you get it in the mail. I ordered, this is my second one I ordered already from AliExpress. It was 160 euros. It came in under 10 days. I think the second time it even arrived in like 7 days. It comes with this screw-in adapter to the engine side. It comes with this bell mouth that should go to the airbox side, and it comes with this cable, throttle cable bracket or mount. This is the accelerator pump, and this is the idle screw. This is where you put the fuel hose. This is a choke. If you pull it out, you get a richer condition for cold weather and stuff. If you got this carb and you try to fit it like it is into your DRZ, you will encounter several problems. First problem is it is too wide, or too long in this direction. It's like 110 millimeters, 11 centimeters. And the original stock carb is around 95 millimeters, I think. So those 1.5 centimeters really do matter. The diameter of this adapter is too big. Also, this retention groove does not really perfectly fit the engine manifold, rubber manifold that it needs to fit in. And another problem, this bell mouth adapter, it doesn't include those two jets that suck in air. So the problem you would have is that you would suck in unfiltered air. That would mean that you can get dust and other particles into your combustion area, and you of course do not want it. And this thing basically does not fit in any way into your airbox. So next I'm going to show you the adapters you need to make it fit. I designed and let a company machine these adapters. This is the adapter for the engine side that goes here. I will show you that in a second. This is an adapter 3D printed from PETG that's heat resistant, UV resistant, and gasoline resistant and oil resistant. As you can see here, this contains space for the jets, the main air jet and the pilot air jet. So they are included in the filtering system of the bike. This throttle cable bracket collides with the frame, and for that I made this much smaller version that also has a better angle to fit the throttle cables. And with those three things that you can get off my eBay shop, you will have a super easy install with no worries whatsoever. The first try, when I tried to get this in, I almost went crazy. It was super annoying to get it in. This side, you can make it fit, but I can totally not recommend it. You will collide with your frame probably anyways. The retention groove will kind of maybe destroy your carburetor manifold adapter thing, rubber thing, and this one does not fit at all. So I'm gonna change them right now, and you will see how it will look when everything is fitting for your DRZ. Before you install this adapter, I recommend you to get some gasket maker, like a high temperature resistant silicone based gasket maker. Apply it around the thread, or you can even apply it around this edge, like this edge. I'm not gonna do it right now here, but you can imagine. Then you screw it in, and you have a super tight seal. There is a space left of 0.5 millimeters or 1 millimeter, and the excessive gasket material will seal this completely perfect. Now you unscrew those screws on the side. Another important thing is you need to get the gasket, an O-ring that fits this groove, and then you can put on this adapter. You put the screws back. I recommend that you use one of those hex keys, like with the round ends, so you can more easily enter from the side a little. You do the same thing on the other side, and now you can see it got a little shorter. And with this adapter you have like the perfect groove that fits the rubber manifold that you can get from the OEM suppliers. Next thing we're gonna change is the throttle cable bracket. Get that off. You add a little spacer here. You also have another spacer here that you fit here. And I don't have the matching screw right now, but the screw goes from here to here and gets fixed with one of those safety nuts. and then you have your carburetor ready. Other stuff that you need to buy is the mentioned manifold that has a diameter of 39 millimeters. It's the original manifold of the DRZ, so you can get it from your Suzuki dealer or online. Then the O-ring that I maybe have already mentioned, that goes between adapter and the carb body. Then you need a clamp for the rubber manifold to the engine side adapter. You need high temperature resistant silicone gasket maker, like this one for example, or whatever you find. And if you had the vacuum version of the fuel petcock, then you can get an adapter that screws into a port in the engine where you now can take your vacuum from, since you in this case will not be able to take it anymore from the carburetor. Another thing that I want to add is the total cost of this performance mod that you can do. The carburetor costs around 150, 160 euros or dollars. This adapter is around 39 euros, this adapter 39, this adapter 20 euros. So you're like 100 euros for the adapters, that's 260 in total. Then you need to buy some other like small product, and in total you will pay around like $300 or 300 euros. Here you can see what jetting I used for this carburetor in my bike. I used an AFR meter, so an air to fuel ratio meter, a lambda meter, lambda sensor that measures the oxygen that comes out of your exhaust gas, and in this way it tells you if you need more fuel or more air in your mixture. So that's a very exact way of figuring out what your jetting has to be. I installed it, I may show it to you in another video, but what's important is what setup did I use this jetting for. My setup was basically a stock SM, DRZ 400 SM. I did the 3x3 airbox mod. That basically just means cut a 3 inches by 3 inches big hole into your airbox, so you allow the motor to suck in more air. The header pipe of my exhaust is stock. I have an aftermarket muffler or exhaust pipe. It's a Leo Vince X3 if you just have any other kind of aftermarket exhaust. Or the stock exhaust, the jetting will be the same, because the aftermarket exhaust where you don't change the header don't affect the performance of the motor in a notable way. Everything else is stock, and I'm at the elevation of 0 to 300 meters from 0. And this led me to use a main jet of 135. I optimized everything for a lambda value of 0.85, which is around 12.6 AFR, I think. Pilot jet, I'm using a 40 right now. You can also probably use a 42, which is included already in the jets that come with the carburetor. The main air jet is a 200. The pilot air jet, I screwed it out 5/8 of a turn. This equals to 75 of a fixed pilot air jet. The fuel screw, you have to try it out with your bike. You can start with a 1.5 turns out. If it goes back to idle quickly after releasing the throttle, this is where you want to have it. If it doesn't, if the idle keeps hanging, Then you have to turn it out a little to allow a little more fuel in the idle state. The needle that I used is the needle that came with the carb. I tried other needles, but you don't need the thinner EMN and EMP needles. Just use the one that it came with. Second clip from the top is where you put the clip. The starter jet. Basically, you have to see when it's winter time where you live if you can start the bike with the choke or not. Just keep the stock one and you should be fine basically. The float height should be between 8 and 10 millimeters. This is what Cahin says for the stock setting. I didn't have to change it at all, but if you want you can make sure to watch a video on how to set the float height and set it to 9 millimeters for starters. And basically, if you follow this, when you have the same setup or like kind of the same setup that I use, you should be good. The DRZ 400 is super forgiving. I used to ride like a main jet of 155 as it is recommended for the DRZ E, and it did not have any problems running. I just had a very low miles per gallon ratio, so I was using a lot more fuel than was necessary, but the bike was still running fine. But after using the AFR meter, I've got the exact perfect values that I want to have. Now I'm going to show you how to jet your carburetor. So the carburetor comes with some jets, not all of those. This is like my bag for all the jets I basically have, but it comes with different main jets and different pilot jets. And to make this carburetor fit your DRZ 400, you need to put in the right jets. And I'm going to show you how you do it. First, you open up the top here to access the needle. Here you can see there's a little screw you have to open up to get to the needle. One way to get it out is just flip it. You can also change the needle when the carburetor is inside of the motorcycle. The way you do it is you use the throttle wheel, you flip it, and if you flip it until the end, the needle shoots out a little and you're able to grab it, and so you don't need to remove the carb every time you want to change the needle clip. So the needle it comes with, on here it says CR39, and that's the needle that in my opinion works really good on the DRZ 400. I tried some other needles, the EMN and EMP needles, but they apparently work good on the DRZ E, but with my DRZ that's mostly stock. This needle was good, and you have different clips. This is what's called the clip. If you see the recommendation, put in the third groove, you count from the top, 1, 2, 3. Now it is already in the third groove. Down here in this hole you can see the fuel screw where you can fine-tune the setting of the fuel that gets through in idle state of the motor, to change the size of the pilot jet, the main air jet, and the starter jet, which you don't need to change at all. You have to remove those 3 screws. You can also access the main air jet if you just remove this bolt here. But so that you're able to see all of it, I'm just gonna remove the 3 screws. So here you can see this is the main jet. Standard or stock with this carb, it comes with a 170, which is much too big for the DRZ. This here is the pilot jet. This here is the starter jet. So the starter jet is, if you pull the choke, then fuel gets sucked into the starter jet. But during normal operation, when the choke is closed, then it's not important. So this is the main jet, that's important. The pilot jet, that's important. And the fuel screw should also be set to the right setting. Another important thing is the float height. Basically, I'm not going to show it in this video, but the float height should be set correctly. You can check the float height in other videos or for the FCR, and it should be set to like 9 or 10 millimeters. Now to put that back together, you make sure that this rod is connected. And you put the screws back. Here you have 2 air jets. This is, if I remember correctly, the pilot air jet, and this is the main air jet. This pilot air jet, in some cases of this carburetor, it comes with fixed jets. So for example, you want to have like a jet of the size 120, you have to get the jet, screw it in, and that's it. But with this one, it is variable, so the amount of turns, it corresponds to a certain pilot air jet. So with this, it is 1 turn out equals a 100 size pilot air jet. So this part of the video is going to be about installing the carb that you just prepared. First thing we're going to do is to remove some screws to get off the seat, and also the screws you need to unscrew to get off the tank. It's kind of optional to get off the seat in the tank, but I totally advise you to do it because it's super quick and makes working a lot easier. So first you remove the screws, the 2 screws on the side of the seat. Next step is removing the lowest screw on the plastics in the front. You only need to remove the low screw that connects the plastics to the radiators. You can keep the plastics connected to the tank. Next step is removing the 2 screws that hold the tank to the frame. Before you can remove the tank, you have to make sure that you remove the fuel screw from the petcock, the fuel petcock, and I like to use an open-ended wrench, like a 8mm, 10mm, so you can pry down the fuel hose from the petcock. Now you can remove the tank. One important thing to note is don't lose those rubber grommets when taking off the tank. Also, when you reinstall the tank, make sure that they stay in the right place. Some people use silicone glue to glue them to the tank. You can do that if you want it. Next is removing this side panel. And now you basically have done all the necessary steps to get to your carburetor and to get to all the screws you need to get to. Here on the left you can see the rubber manifold that you got from your Suzuki dealer or online that connects the carburetor to the engine side. And here on the right you can see the manifold to the airbox. Now you'll unscrew the clamps on either side of the carb a little bit. And as you can see, you'll be able to pry off the airbox side manifold a little bit off the carb. Here you can see the throttle cable. I only have mounted one throttle cable because I already have the FCR 39 in. You might have still the two throttle cables of the Mikuni carb, and yeah, the throttle cable connects to the wheel. Now you'll see me loosening the screws to get the throttle cable off. Here you can also see a different throttle cable bracket, throttle cable holder that I made out of the throttle cable bracket that came with the carb. Yeah, I cut it off, fabricated a reinforcement on it, and if you can do that yourself, you can also use it. Just a note for remounting, the throttle cable goes into the second groove of the throttle cable wheel of the carburetor. Now it's basically a lot of wiggling and trying. If you push back the airbox manifold, you can gain some space on the carburetor. Also, what I did not do this time is removing the regulator rectifier. That gives you a little more space down below. As you can see here, now that the carburetor can be pushed back a little, it slides out a little easier out of the engine side manifold. And now finally it's out. So now it's time to install the carburetor that you prepared with all the fitting adapters back into the bike. My recommendation after doing this a lot of times now is that you really should try to peel back the airbox manifold, the airbox rubber adapter on the right side behind the frame. So it's a little hard to do that, especially when the rubber is cold. You can heat it with the hair dryer or industrial fan or whatever. But if you manage to get the rubber behind the frame, it will be much easier to get the carb in, and then you can just push the rubber back into the bike, and then it should slide onto the airbox side adapter of the carb. On this side you have to make sure that the throttle cable mounting bracket doesn't collide with the frame, so it doesn't break off or anything. Now you can see the moment where you can push back the airbox rubber boot. I didn't do it perfect this time. It's better if your carburetor is a little further inside the frame, then the rubber boot almost immediately connects to the plastic adapter of the carb. But yeah, if you move it a little around, it still will fit onto the carb. Now you adjust the clamp to sit in the groove correctly. You can see if the carburetor is pushed into the manifold on the engine side correctly by just having a look at the aluminium of the screw-in adapter that is showing on the left side of the carb. If you see that the carb is somehow at an angle, just correct it before you tighten the clamp. You can also see that the silicone gasket maker was applied in a way that it seals the adapter perfectly by filling all of this gap, all of those 1 or 0.5 millimeters. And yeah, that's one of the things you have to make sure. Also, make sure I marked a little bit. I marked the part where the screw-in adapter connects to the carburetor with a little line, and now it's a little washed off, but if you make a line on both the screw-in adapter and the carburetor, you can make sure that the screw-in adapter, while installing the carb, doesn't loosen itself, which hasn't happened to me but might, so you can make sure of that. Last step is to connect the throttle cable to the throttle cable bracket and to the wheel. First you turn out the screw on the right to the furthest side on the right. Also remove the left nut is what I meant, I'm sorry. Then you push it in like this. You take the left nut, connect it back to the screw body of the throttle cable. Now you turn the left nut in until it sits into the groove of the throttle cable holder. You can pull the cable and it sits flush then, and now you turn the right screw until you have the throttle cable secured completely. You take an open-ended wrench, give it a quarter turn more to secure it against the plastics. Here you can see also the throttle cable of the DRZ S and SM, which has a little curve at the end. If you get the throttle cable of the DRZ E, it will be straight and it might even be a better fit. But if not, you can install it like I did here. I removed the other pushing cable out of the throttle body. I haven't showed it here, but it's fairly easy to do. And with those types of carbs, usually only one throttle cable is used. For safety reasons, it used to be different. You can use a second cable, but it's not necessary, I think. The second to last step is to get the throttle cable into the wheel. It goes into the second groove. You can use pliers like I tried it here. You can use it by hand. It's just a little, just trying it out and wriggling it in. The last step after installing the throttle cable is to set the pre-tension at the throttle body at the bars. There's a nut and a countering nut, and you can look up in the manual how that exactly works, but it's fairly easy. So once you're finished with that, you just assemble the bike back again together in the reverse order. So you put on the tank, watch the rubber grommets stay in their place. You put on the seat again, you connect the fuel hose of the carb to the petcock, and then you can basically just start the bike, and that's it. I hope this installation instruction helped you out, and if you have any questions, just send me a message and I try to help out.